Today, we ask you to open your mind with pure intellectual curiosity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are in corporations all over America. But how do we address inclusion on an individual level? We're going deeper on the subject of racism. I'm Lisa Ellen Smith, and this is Focus on Business.
Hi, I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications for the Small Business Association of Michigan. And SBAM is here and ready to help you become small business certified. So what does that mean? That means that you can get additional credentials and the certification that will set yourself apart from competition. If your business has fewer than 500 employees and annual revenues equal to or less than 25 million, you are eligible to be certified small by SBAM. Small businesses that become certified receive an additional layer of credibility and open the door for procurement opportunities that exist specifically for small businesses. Once you have the certification, SBAM is also here to help you gain visibility and access to these contracts. We host a special online directory of our certified small businesses, making it easy for those looking for your products and services to search and find out more about your business. You can learn about the application process and get started at www.sbam.org/certified.
Welcome guests. We have Jimmy Green, CEO of Associated Builders and Contractors of Michigan, and Kelly Ellsworth Etchinson, Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Diversity Officer from LAFQ. Welcome today. I'm so excited about this show. I've been wanting to do a show about diversity, equity, and inclusion for some time. And until I really heard the panel that you guys were on, it didn't make sense on how I could present it to this audience. But diversity, equity, inclusion, a lot of people are saying DEI. It has come to my office. We have a lot of corporate clients, and we're creating logos for their DEI initiatives. And I think that that's a wonderful place to start. But for those companies that are trying to figure out really where to begin with diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, what suggestions can you provide for them?
All right. Well, thank you for having us on, Lisa. And I'll just jump right in and ask those companies, do they know their why? Why do they want to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion? Do they know why they're driven this way? I know that a lot of businesses jumping in after the tragedy of the murder of George Floyd last May. And so a lot of companies are seeing what we as African Americans have known has been happening with the police brutality and so forth. When you can put your knee on a man's neck for almost 9 minutes for a non-violent alleged crime, that speaks volumes. And so what is your why? Is your why because it's something that everyone's doing and now you feel like you should do it? For me, I say, like my company, we still have not put out a racial injustice statement. And because we needed to have those conversations internally. So are you willing to understand your why, vet that out, begin to have those conversations with your teams so that they don't all of a sudden see that now you're doing this initiative, but there's been no internal dialogue, right? So they're like, you don't want your teams to be like, oh, really? This is how we feel. We didn't know that. And so you got to really vet that out. And you have to be intentional about the work. So it's not just putting this racial injustice statement out, because now you need to be held accountable to those words. And if you have no plan, you have no intentionality behind that racial injustice statement, what are you going to say when your customer base holds you accountable to that statement? When they ask you, what does this mean? Or when they misbehave in something that's contrary to your injustice statement, do you give them now a pass because you want to keep their business? Or do you say, oh, we're moving in a different direction. Your beliefs don't line up with our beliefs. And so we're gonna sever this relationship. Or as the Survey Monkey CEO said in a panel discussion I watched him on. He says, I'm firing all vendors whose beliefs don't line up with my beliefs. And so that's what you have to make sure that you're able to now walk this out. And so that's why it's so important. Understand your why, be intentional, begin to start to put some practices and policies in place that you can be held accountable to, because you most likely will be held accountable to it.
Well, and you know what we've got here, DEI, it's a great place to start. It's wonderful to say this is important to us. These are part of our cultures and our values. But if you have, like many boardrooms or leadership teams around the country, a whole lot of mostly white people sitting around a table figuring out what their diversity initiative is, then I'm not sure that that's completely the best place to start. I have to believe that in some way there's got to be some conversations, and those conversations with people outside of the leadership team, people who are in diverse cultures, people with brown skin, people who have second languages, people who have different orientations. Those are so uncomfortable, but you've got to have those people in the room to hear what it is that's going to make a difference in the world. Why is that so uncomfortable, though?
It should be. It's supposed to be. I mean, what isn't? I mean, I'm uncomfortable going any place for the first time in many respects. But I mean, it's funny to me because I love what Kelly said. I mean, because to me, that's the easiest thing to answer. When Kelly says, well, why? My response is just as easy, because I want to stay in business. Like, I get the idea that we are the world and we all want to feel, I get all that because that's my true nature. At the end of the day, you know, nobody's feelings are outside of a door. What's outside of the door is a welcome, and what's inside of the door is profit and loss. At the end of the day, when you look at how people stay in business, it's adapting to change. It's supplying a demand from your consumer. The world has changed rapidly, and so are your P&Ls. I mean, we can look at stores now that we used to always Blockbuster. Go try to rent a video now because they didn't keep up with TV online demand. Go into Sears. Oh, that's right. There is no Sears. I can keep going to Eastman Kodak. Change happens. And if you're not ready to confront it, which is uncomfortable because it means, hey, guess what? You don't work anymore. Your model doesn't work anymore. Worse yet, somebody doesn't want you anymore. It is an insult to your corporate byline or your bottom line for that matter. And at the end of the day, you're out of business. So, you know, I get that some people don't feel warm and fuzzy. I work with builders and contractors everywhere. And to your point about being in a room, you know, that's the authenticity of being who you are in a room. You don't lose that. If you believe in certain principles and values and diversity, the first thing you do is become the means to an end, which means that I always take it the other way. I always call it talent and opportunities. And I always reverse it because I think it's inclusion, equity, and diversity. Because if you create an environment where you're welcoming and counting color or counting gender, that's fine, except at the end of the year when gender and color are all out the room, that's not exactly an inclusive environment. So you might have met the diversity standard, but the inclusion part is the most important piece, which means I feel welcome and I'm staying. And so if you invite us in, me as a Black man, into a place in your home, and you say, Jimmy, you're welcome here. I want you to come and have dinner. And I come in, and that behind the dinner table is a Confederate flag. Well, your dinner table is diverse, but I damn sure don't feel included, if you know what I mean. So the inclusion part of this is necessary. And to Kelly's point, the why is a simple formula for business owners: profit and loss. I want to stay in business. And yeah, if the feel good comes after that, that's wonderful, because that's typically what happens. Your environment changes. You're different. And that's what creates this equitable piece to me. But it's
and I think that's a really good point, because I mean, there's a lot of data out there why it makes sense. First of all, separate from the data is it's just the right thing to do, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're all people, we're all human, right? We're of this human race. But secondly, when you look at the data and you hear numbers, and some of the numbers may vary a little bit, but when you hear that there's like $16 trillion left on the table because businesses and people of color whether it's the, BIPOC, Blacks, Indigenous, and then people of color aren't being able to, like Jimmy said, the inclusiveness. When you're not able to come to have a seat at the table, you don't feel valued, you don't feel included, you're not bringing your best self to the workplace. You feel that your ideas are going to get shut down because you look a certain way, or you have an orientation a certain way, or whatever this mainstream definition of how a human is supposed to be and look. And so people began to not be as creative, not be as can I really bring this idea? Will they shut me down? Will they hear me? And so that is incredible. And a lot of times that uncomfortableness, so the uncomfortableness is right, because this is starting to get at the personal core of why this construct of racism, which was a business idea. Let's get right to the basis of racism. This construct of racism was a business idea. Let's get free labor so that we can move our product. When you hear about the Mayflower and you don't hear about White Lion, two ships a year apart that came, and one we celebrate and we still memorialize and we have this national holiday, but the other one, just as important, a year prior, when they come on shore, it's like cargo. It's like we have 20 plus Negroes and they're cargo, and they're traded for food and all of this, and let's have this free labor. So when you talk about that, you talk about really why the Civil War happened, and you talk about why we still are pushing against this whole idea of let's be included, let's have people at the table that may look different than me. This is not a total sum game that you, white person, will have something taken away from you if I allow now this Black person to come and have a seat at the table and bring their thoughts and ideas. This is a game where we all win. We all benefit when we all bring, and it's not really a game in that sense, but I'm just saying, people look at this as a total sum game, and they bought into this notion that if I allow Black people to be educated, have a job in the C-suite, bring these ideas, have equitable pay, then somebody else over here, white person, has missed out on this opportunity. And that's a wrong way to look at this.
And so that's really what people are talking about when they say white fragility, right? The very act of empowerment means I lose something. It's almost that kind of sixth grade idea. If you like this person, then you're not going to be as good of friends with me. I'm going to lose something now. And that's just simply not what the research is bearing out. When you empower more people, everybody wins.
Yeah,
everybody wins.
Careful. Yeah, and we have to be careful about that, though. I push back on that a little bit because I do believe there's some substance to it. But I think when we broad stroke people like that, you kill a conversation. I talk about that because Kelly knows this too. I walk in a room and how dare you pigeonhole me? We laugh about it. I'm Black, Catholic, Republican. I'm an LGBT advocate. I mean, how dare you say something based on the fact that I am a Black man with a baseball hat on? Well, that's another strange thing too. I wear a suit and a baseball hat. So I'm so eclectic. I mean, you almost have to walk on eggshells around me. I love that. You know why? Because it gives me a chance to educate folks. I think before I denote somebody as racist, I treat most people as ignorant, and they're ignorant because of a lack of experience. Look, I'm not Chinese. I would feel out of place in a Chinese culture, and then when I'm taught Chinese culture and I act in a African-American way, that's intentional and probably could be confused with, or probably aligned with, racism. There's what you know and what you don't know. And I think most white people I run into, they don't know. So when you take on the opportunity to make them uncomfortable teaching something that now they know, but they continue to perpetuate in ignorance, well, you're just racist now because you know better. So we have to be very careful about immediately assigning something, a label to somebody without the benefit of knowing them, because that's what we've been pushing back against. You look at me as a Black man and that's a stereotype. And yet I look at you as a white person and you're racist until otherwise. That's a hypocrisy we got to be really careful of.
And I don't think I've said that at all.
No,
So that's
no,
not
no.
anything.
I'm talking about the
Yeah.
White Fragility book, because I get it and there were some merits to it, but it was so wide, it was so broad sweeping. I think a lot of people push back a little on that. And that's why I think we have to be a little careful. Not you, Kelly. That wasn't my point.
Yeah, yeah.
It was the book.
What I do love about that book, though, I will say, is because it does speak to that uncomfortableness and why people are uncomfortable. And Robin DiAngelo, the author, she doesn't hold any punches for sure. And she is looking at a lot of data where she's coming to her assumptions based upon that data. But yeah, it's, the bottom line is that we're still like 400 plus years later, that we are still having this conversation, but we are in this moment right now, right? Where people are willing to hear. Not everyone will come along, and I'm learning to understand that not everyone wants to even engage in the conversation. But, when I hear about the people are being uncomfortable, and I think, you know what, you're going to be okay though. I've been uncomfortable my entire life. I have had to assimilate. And people that have worked with me, I've worked at my particular credit union, this credit union for 33 years. People just see me as Kelly, right? They don't understand all of the dynamics that go into being Kelly. And they just see the Kelly that shows up for work at LAFQ.
I agree.
But they don't understand what it's like when I go out to networking events, when I join different social clubs, when I do these things, that they don't know what's going on in my mind when I walk into a networking room. And I'm like, I am looking still all these years later, I still walk in and I'm looking for people in the room that may look like me, understanding that the people that are going to look like me are the same people. Paula Cunningham, it's like,
oh, that's true.
I can count that. And, when I go to a restaurant, the same thing here. But when I'm from Pontiac. So when I go back home to visit my family and I go to a restaurant, pre-COVID, in let's say Southfield, and I walk in the room and everybody looks like me and there's like one or two white people, I'm like doing a little dance. I'm like, hey, and I am celebrating that.
But who's uncomfortable then?
People celebrating that.
I know, but then they're uncomfortable too. I think the idea is to make us all a little bit more comfortable, even when sometimes you're in the minority.
Yes, I think that's important. I want to back up so many things I want to talk about here. Number one, white privilege, unpacking the invisible knapsack, white fragility, why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism, a couple of books that you might want to read. But I think it's important to help white people or people of privilege understand why it's so important to understand their power. You hear people say, and they truly believe, everybody has the same opportunity in America. Everybody starts with a blank page. Work hard and you will have what I have. That there is nothing about this culture or again the profiteering of racism. So talk about white power, white privilege. I see people on Facebook say, I worked hard all my life. I think it's terrible that somebody's calling me white privilege.
I don't think first of all, privilege is a word I don't think you should assign color to. And I'll tell you, it's where you are from, quite frankly, and for me, when you have privilege, white or black, my expectations of you are higher. Look, I come from the projects. I had to scrap. I had to fight my way out of there. So the expectations of me are really low. I have my best friends who were born into wealth or born in, you know what? You had a great head start. I don't want you to apologize for your privilege. You know what I do want? You to do more, you to do better. You have more resources, you have more assistance. You didn't have to fall back on something because you never felt that fragility. You never felt that vulnerable. So my expectations of you are really, really high.
I had a friend post in Facebook that she got stopped by a police officer, and immediately the questions that came to her mind were, do I have my driver's license? Do I have my insurance? Do I have my registration? She said, she has a friend who their questions that come to mind are going to be, am I safe? Am I going to get hurt? Am I going to get arrested? And that's a different kind of power. That's a different kind of privilege to not have to ask those questions in the world. We are at time, and I could spend 3 hours just probably exploring each question. I want to thank you for being here today. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate all the work you're doing.
This is Denise Policella with Focus on Legal, and today we're talking about having a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace. And of course, DEI is the goal. You're saying to yourself, I have a DEI workplace, I'm a fair person, but do you truly? And if you don't, how do we get you there and still keep you risk averse? Well, the key is true objectivity, which you may not have from inside your own company. This is what I mean. Not having any policy and just assuming that you have a diverse workplace is just delaying the inevitable. But going way, way overboard and starting to just randomly hire people because they make your company physically look more diverse is going to have the opposite of the intended effect and will backfire on you. What I'm talking about is having a diverse and inclusive culture while maintaining objective practices and policies. Here's an example. When you go to hire, you want an ad that clearly incentivizes pulling people from a wide variety of backgrounds and cultures. And then when you go to actually make your hiring decision, you base your decision on objective criteria like education and qualifications and experience. Also make sure that you understand that diversity does not mean inclusion. Just because you may have a diverse workplace doesn't mean it feels inclusive. Do you still have antiquated policies that only recognize Christian holidays, for example? Now, I'm not suggesting that you close your business for all religious holidays on the calendar or you'll never be open, but maybe only on national holidays and then give floating holidays for individual religious observance, something like that. This kind of scrutiny is hard to do to yourself, and it's hard to get a lot of perspective on your own company from the inside. So hire somebody from the outside who's an HR expert in this area, and do it soon. This is something you want to take initiative on. You do not want this growing as a grassroots movement in your own company. Being reactionary is never good risk management practice. So start today and don't handle this one on your own.
Focus on Law, brought to you by Pochella and Associates, PLLC.
Hi, I'm Katie from Cedar River Insurance. This is Focus on Insurance, where I try to help you make sense of what insurance can do for your business and the ways that you can improve your portfolio if there's some gaps there. I want to talk today about a small piece of insurance that you probably already have but don't know. It's called Employment Practices Liability Insurance. If you don't already have it, you should probably get it. So Employment Practices Liability Insurance, or EPLI, can sometimes be found as a small line item within your commercial general liability policy, right under your liability limit. It also could be found in your professional liability policy. So take your portfolio out and take a look for that line item. This is protection against an employee bringing a lawsuit against you for an employment-related purpose, like wrongful termination, harassment, discrimination, even failure to promote. This coverage is very important to have, and it isn't terribly expensive, but it's something that I find employers often don't know that they have or don't know that they need. So pull your policies out today and look for that EPLI limit. If you can't find it, or if you find it and there's only $100,000 or $200,000, this probably isn't enough. If you're an employer, a lawsuit could potentially be very expensive, even if you have not done anything wrong. Even if there's really no cause for the lawsuit, the cost of defending yourself, of court fees, attorney's fees, administrative fees, missing work, etc., it can really add up. So take a minute today, pull your policies out, look for those, and call your agent to ask for ways that you can increase this. They might suggest you add your higher limits. They might suggest a whole separate standalone policy that can protect you if you have multiple employees. I hope this has been helpful for you. Again, I'm Katie from Cedar River Insurance. Thanks.
Focus on Insurance, brought to you by Cedar River Insurance.
I'm attorney Richard Craig Krause, and to expand and maintain diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's necessary to keep people working. And to that end, the SBA and the IRS have expanded PPP2 benefits and the Employee Retention Tax Credit, and they work together. The point is, you can get PPP loans and you can get the tax credits too. Plus, the tax credits can be refunded to you directly. And better still, you can get the tax credits this year. Plus, you can reach back into last year and claim the credits that you think you may have missed. And it's worth investigating because this isn't chump change. The Employee Retention Tax Credit alone can be worth as much as $5,000 per year per employee. So the benefits can be substantial, and I've seen them tally to 6 figures. Obviously, there are eligibility requirements. First, ask yourself whether any government COVID-19 related orders partially or fully suspended your operations during any calendar quarter by limiting commerce, travel, or other group meetings. Or ask yourself whether you've experienced a significant decline in gross receipts during a calendar quarter. Well, I suspect that many of you in Michigan can answer yes. So whether you're in business for profit or you're a nonprofit, whether you're involved in commerce, religious, or other activities, please explore your eligibility and talk to your tax professional. Go beyond my short introduction and get into your facts and your numbers. The need is pressing and the time is now. If you want more general introductory information about this topic, other employment tax credits, and other general tax information, go to our website and fill out the request form. You can also schedule a consultation with us at the site. Thank you.
Focus on Tax, brought to you by Krause, Bangs, and Associates PC.
Build a better marketing strategy with Inverve Marketing. The way we buy has changed. It's time to dream bigger. With digital marketing, you can build your business faster, measure and evaluate results. Let us help you find your marketing superpowers with Inbound Marketing, driven by strategy with inspired creativity. Why not put some verve in your brand? Market and grow better with Inverve Marketing. The executive producers of Focus on Business are looking for your stories. Stories from owners of established businesses that have come through amazing adversity, bucked the odds, found the next big thing. If you have a story, we want to hear from you. Go to our website and maybe we'll invite you onto the show.